Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SD Times live webinar with ValueOps ConnectAll. It's AI automation and pattern thinking. I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times, and here to drive the conversation is Lance Knight. He's the chief value stream architect at ValueOps by Broadcom. How you doing, Lance?
Hey, I'm doing great, Dave. I haven't done one of these with you in so long, and it's so exciting to have a webinar with you again after this long break.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the webinars we do together, and
Well, hopefully this will be another good one.
I'm sure it will be.
I'm sure it will. So anyway, what we're going to explore today is how identifying and leveraging patterns in your processes can significantly enhance efficiency and drive automation across your organization. So as we've been writing in SD Times, the use of AI is growing at a speed we haven't really seen almost since the internet. And being able to apply artificial intelligence to perform repetitive tasks can save you time, cut down on errors, and allow your team to focus on higher value activities. Before we get started, I just have a couple of real quick announcements. First, today's webinar is going to be followed by a live Q&A session. So you can ask a question at any point during the presentation in the chat area of the platform, and we'll get to as many of them as time will allow. Secondly, this session is also being recorded and will be available on demand starting tomorrow for you to replay or share with your colleagues. And now to get us started, here's Lance Knight.
Hey, thanks, Dave. To start off, I want to take 1 minute and say I have an ebook out there for people to go look at. It's about mastering chaos, pattern thinking, and managing noise in your value stream. Mm-hmm. QR code's right there. It's more information about this. So feel free to go and download it and use it. But I had to give a commercial for a minute, Dave, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I had written a book, I'd be pushing it too.
So I wanted to say this. This is really interesting to me when we look at this image. Now, how often have you and I looked at this image over the last couple of years, right? We were just talking about, what value stream management is that we did in 2017. Right. And we've been talking about these silos since before that. It's been a long time that we've been talking about this method, this process, how software gets developed, and how chaotic it is, right? The silos. How many webinars have you been on where somebody talked about the silos?
Pretty much everyone.
Pretty much everyone over the last period of time that we've been doing this together. And then before, of course, we started doing webinars, right? How requests go to usage and plan, build, test. And I've talked a lot about how this is just not very efficient, and you're not able to have visibility within this. And of course, nobody really stays aligned to the priorities of an organization, right? So, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's talked about this that you've worked with in these webinars, right? So,
that's true. Yeah.
For example, look at all the different deploy tools we have now. What I used to call that a tooling explosion, right? How many tools were out there for all this stuff?
Right.
And they all work in disconnections and silos. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I've been saying for a while, and we've been talking about this, is companies are hoping that value stream management will solve this problem like it did in manufacturing. Somebody has an experience in manufacturing. I used to work in manufacturing, shop floor, all that stuff. When my life was dull before I met you, we actually went through and I mapped value streams and did all these different things, right? But we've been talking about how that really doesn't align, how it doesn't really work, right? How it's falling down.
Yeah, that's something that, we had been writing about. We launched in, 1999. And there was always this disconnect between business and IT. Well, they don't use the same tools. They don't speak the same language. How do you know what you're getting? Right. So there was all of that difficulty. And then when Value Stream came around, we started to realize, hey, maybe this is the thing that actually is going to get business and IT finally get them all on the same page.
Yeah, and it is. However, I think the principles are really different, right? So like I say on this slide, the processes in software development aren't linear like in manufacturing, right? When I worked in manufacturing, that product would come in one door and out the other, right? So raw material would come in one door, always the same raw material, always going through the same process, and then go out the door with the part, always the same. The software's not like that at all. I mean, they're different batch sizes, different things, right? There's really no collaboration in that process either, right? You have expediters, right? So you have a work order, they take the parts, put it to a cell, they do their thing, and they move on. It's not like this cell's talking to that cell. They're pushing and pulling work through the value stream. And resources are different. Funding these things is very different as well. When you fund a product that you're going to develop, you fund the value stream and make the different cells and things that you want to do, but that's normally funded by your customers' orders, not by predictive value that you may perceive to your customer down the road. And value is perceived and delivered very differently. The value is different when you talk about software. So it's very different. We've talked about these things a little bit in the past, where in manufacturing, there are less feedback loops, just like I just said, right? One cell is not really talking to the other cell in the same way, right? They may be saying, hey, I've got this batch done, give me more. That's pulling work, right? But it's not the same as you have to collaborate in software. It's not the same at all, right? And it's always the same process. So I think this is where that's kind of falling down. And the vision we talk about is more this kind of vision. How many times have I shown you this slide? You can joke with me a little bit about, the software value stream and the 3-tier governance model against request portfolio going through. And I kind of put this as a I can't say the word, Shangri-La. I said it wrong, of course. But, things come in from the business, right? All the way through, right? They come from intake to approval to funding to deployment and then the development flow. And all of this looks really pretty, right? As it's flowing through all the way to operations. And of course, you're using all your tools. Now, I have to say, I created this image and I've walked through this one with you how many times, but I got to say, it's not really like that, is it? Because the information really doesn't flow in this way. It flows completely different. Actually, there's more to this.
There's more.
There's a lot more, but wait, there's more. But there's a lot more to this method and process. And I call that value stream noise. Now, I talk a lot about noise in your value stream in my ebook and some of the different types of noise. But really, it's more like this. Right? You got feedback loops that are going all over the place. People are communicating. There is people interruption. There is, all these things that kind of make this slow. Right? And yes, I know I spelled the word very wrong. Look at that. You can call me out on it.
A very of noise.
It's very noisy.
Looking at that picture is making me hungry. I don't know. I'm feeling like pasta. I don't know.
I don't know if I could give the hungry thing to you, but if you look at, how much of this is really happening this way. And I call these different types of noise, right? So one of the biggest noise in your value stream is really just emails, right? Email and communication about this feature, this thing, all these things are flowing around, not in tool, right? So for example, I was working with a company on automating the flow of work between their scanning tools all the way to, the backlog that get them fixed. What would happen would be somebody would look at the scanning tool, see the vulnerability, look at that vulnerability, and then go into another tool, their agile planning tool, and key it in, actually type it in. So that would happen a lot. I used to see that a lot in this process. So that type of noise happens all over the value stream where tons and tons of emails are flowing back and forth. And then also there's this noise, which I call tool insanity. I just talked about one thing, which is of course, the scanning tools. Welcome back, Dave.
Yeah.
I talked about one thing, which is, of course, the scanning tools. And then look at all these different tools, an explosion of different tools to do different things to fit the different companies that do different types of things, right? If you look here, I mean, there's, version 1, which is now digital AI. They've got AgileCraft, which is now part of Atlassian. But you also have these different functional tools, different testing tools for different organizations. And larger organizations do what I call application integration, and then do really development, right? Think of the cloud tools that have exploded this industry over the last how many years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the different DevSecOps tools. So all these solutions are being deployed, creating all this need to log into multiple applications for the developer, for the tester, for the product owners, on a daily basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many different solutions today that I have to go and log into. And of course, there's this noise here where there's no time to work. I'm too busy doing all these meetings. Those meetings are to talk about, well, these things that got emailed from here, or maybe I have a weekly meeting about the vulnerabilities that are there and which ones that we should put over rather than just sending them over, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just very inefficient, all of this type of stuff. And here's the other one. This is the one I love. This is one I love a lot, which is this. Types of noise, work interruption, Slack, text messages, all of that. Did you hear the little ding? That was my phone interrupting me. And right now, in the middle of this webinar, that is calling my attention away. All these different things, but you need to monitor some of these things so that they help you. So all this noise is there to really make things just not that efficient. And now organizations are actually making that worse because they're organizing around value streams. So that's kind of the new thing, right? Where I have my different value streams. They have to communicate across their different value streams so you know what's going on. That exacerbates this issue a little bit more as they're deciding the tools and their ceremonies and the way they like to work. So you're seeing some of that going on as well. And a lot of organizations are being really successful with organizing around value streams and delivering against products rather than projects.
Mm-hmm.
But the dependencies are still there.
Right.
And all of that has to get communicated. And that normally happens in an email or a chat or a weekly meeting on your value stream stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of this slows down your productivity and so on.
Yeah. So let me ask you.
Frankly, to take this to my marketing message that Broadcom wants me to say, which I completely agree with, is that this creates a lack of visibility. These teams are not aligned, and it's very inefficient. We recently did a survey with Broadcom. It said most executives, 80%, say they don't have good visibility into work. You see how that could happen with this scenario, Dave?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big issue for people.
So
and I know developers.
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
As we think the rest of this through, one of the other effects of it are these types of things. And by the way, your mic's not working, Dave.
Oh. So
the symptoms and causes of effect, right? Some of the symptoms are misinformation. I can't track progress across these different value streams. I can't, of course, causes disconnect, silos of these things. Some of the effect is the increase of risk, right? So if I can't repair that vulnerability really quickly from one to the other, then I'm introducing risk, right? For that time frame, right? Some of those DORA metrics talk about this kind of thing, where mean time to repair and things like that. This improves those types of things and increases risk because you're not aligned. So the challenge is, of course, is what do we do with this mess? What can I do to kind of look at this, analyze it, see how I can be more efficient, see how I can remove some of these things. And there's a bunch of different practices we can use to do that. Practices like, this is the challenge, right? With this mess, the challenge is how across all of these different types of vertical systems, right? I've got my agile planning, monitoring, tasks. How do I increase visibility? How do I create better alignment? And how do I optimize efficiency across all these different verticals, from requirements to portfolio, across that whole enterprise? And I'm saying this is where pattern thinking comes in. And by the way, I haven't talked much about AI, but AI can help with these kind of things as you're starting to automate and as you're starting to look at how to improve your efficiencies as well.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
You can use pattern thinking to do a bunch of different things. I'm sorry, Dave, that was my fault. I couldn't hear you. You can use pattern thinking to do a couple different things. First, different common patterns in the value stream are part of this, but you want to use it to look for bottlenecks. You want to look for how you can be more efficient. You want to look at all these different areas where you can be more productive in your value stream. Here's some of the tools that you can use to help you do that. Systems thinking, lean principles. You can map the value stream and use system maps. All of these will help you be more efficient in the value stream. I've talked about these for a while, right, Dave?
You have.
I actually have, yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you can hear me now.
That would be my fault. I apologize for that. So the system thinking, lean principles, I've talked about that, I don't know, every webinar, I think, maybe every other webinar, how you can use that. Systems thinking is pretty straightforward, right? When you look at how things are developed and how things flow through your value stream, you can apply these principles like emergence and interconnectivity and different types of feedback loops. So when you think about it, one of the things I say a lot is as you're mapping your value stream, that really doesn't map the same way these feedback loops. So I think, applying value stream mapping and system thinking is what you have to do, because there are so many different types of feedback loops in software development. Reinforcing loops, there are regular feedback loops. All of these things that you're doing and communicating with are all part of those feedback loops. And if you don't map those, it's hard to improve.
True.
And of course, have you ever seen this before?
Yep.
Talk about lean principles a lot. Identify value, map the value stream, create flow, establish pull, and seek perfection, right? So this is a house of lean. Using lean thinking helps a lot as well. And I've used that a lot in order to talk about efficiencies as well, right? And each one of these are part of that. Judecco, which I don't talk about, I don't say the word right, but that's about automating, using automation. So it really helps you identify that. Map the value stream. This is a value stream map, but you can see that the tools aren't in here, but it talks about the whole process, right? Here's a customer request, development time, moving all through here it has some of the different agile practices and so on that you can use if you need to. And here's the thing I like to talk about is about these artifacts. These artifacts we use to design and put software through, right? So when you think about manufacturing, it's not like this at all, right? Manufacturing, you have production control, you have work orders and things that move. Here you've got defects, reports, incidents reports, you've got emails in here, requests from the customer. These are all different artifacts it lists within the system of record. And these records, these things are where you can find patterns and find places to automate.
And AI models are also very good at recognizing and identifying patterns within systems.
Well, it's kind of interesting. AI really is all about patterns, decision trees, decision processes, and so on, right? So we're looking at different ways of using AI and automation and value stream automation today on how we can have it actually make decisions for you based upon operationalizing your value stream data. So systems thinking, here's systems thinking, a systems diagram, right? So this is what you do with systems thinking, right? So I'm going to diagram these different flows. These are different feedback loops that are going on. So you apply these together with the value stream map, and you get a real understanding of Why are we having this ceremony or this meeting? Why so much email back and forth on defining a requirement or moving things through? Why can't we just get to, like they said in the manifesto, get to coding, right? Why do we need all these other pieces in order to be effective? So that's what this is all about, using systems thinking, using pattern thinking in order to find bottlenecks, delays, inefficiencies in your process. There are more than just, this one piece of it, which is DevOps, but also in your development processes and your portfolio process as you look end to end on how you're going to deliver software. You may look at your processes and say, this one is better off if it's waterfall compared to agile. That makes more sense based upon what we're trying to do, right? Not everything fits within a certain scrum or iteration or process like that. Some things have to be different to be effective. And then you can look at it and look at the patterns and use this to say, okay, here's how these two can effectively work together in the right way. So now when we think about it, there's a whole bunch of different patterns that you start to uncover, right? And you got to look at automating in your value stream and think about how can I synchronize, trigger, monitor, capture data, capturing that data to operationalize it within your value stream. So I can look at, okay, this says this, so I need to improve here. But always using that data as part of your daily process, as part of your daily workflow. And there are different patterns you can identify. For example, here's some patterns that I've identified over the years of doing this. I think it's been about a week or two since I've been doing this, Dave. And actually, it's been a long time.
I know.
So here's some of the different patterns. For example, planning. Requirements traceability is a pattern, right? Because if you're working in different solutions across your organization, you need to take, the epic, and maybe that epic goes to somebody who's doing Rally, and maybe that epic goes to somebody that's using Jira or ADO, and you have to have all that rolling up together so that you can see traceability down through for audits and other things that you're doing all the way to code. And these different patterns come around a lot. For example, here's some other patterns, right? Where you're connecting these things together: requirements, traceability, visibility, developer and test alignment. So that's like Micro Focus, which is a testing solution. You might want to connect your test data management in there. What that does is make sure defects get fixed quicker and do those different things, right? This is an example of what I call a governance pattern. So a governance pattern, what this does is you get a change request in a tool like ServiceNow. It validates that the tests are run and the scans are done. An automation AI, or what we call them AND gates, can see that and then trigger a deployment to happen. Move your code through if you need to. And once you start to automate these things, you actually do start to get things like visibility, alignment. And of course, this is just much more efficient when you're thinking about how to drive value through your value stream and deliver that to customers. So that's the trick, is connecting the enterprise through the power of these tools and the solutions you're using, and analyzing it and using pattern thinking. Because when you think about organizations, they do tend to have their own patterns, and you start to see these patterns. That's all I had.
Well done. Very good. I'd like to remind everybody who's listening to us today, if you have any questions, now would be a great time to ask them while we still have Lance here, and we'll get to as many as we can. One of the things I want to talk about, a couple of points you made, I wanted to ask you about, and, it's the tooling. Now a lot of organizations are going towards these, IDPs, right, and developer platforms to serve as the integration points of saying, okay, these are what you need now to, create your application. So how does that work into a value stream mindset or a pattern mindset?
So you're talking about DevOps and platform engineering?
Yeah.
So absolutely, it fits into the whole pattern thinking, because here's your tools, you download them, you use them. You have to do a little bit of understanding what you're going to need for that developer to develop what it is they're working on in order to set up the platform part of what you're doing, right? You're setting up that platform. here's the IDE you need to use, and here's the testing way. And also when you start to connect these things in the background after the developer, here's where those things really come into play. Like your DevOps pipeline is different from that, right? That's more of the developer's experience, right?
Right.
That we're talking about in platform engineering and how you drive and fix that.
Yeah. So
the background of all that pattern thinking, value stream management has to really come into play as you're looking at that stuff.
Right. So another point that I wanted to raise that, of course, just flew out of my head because I'm 1,000 years old, and that's what happens. It's about, you talk about value stream, and it's not one value stream, obviously. There are many different ones. And in looking at that screen that you put up that showed 4 value streams kind of side by side, now those also have to interact with one another, I'm assuming, to be totally efficient in making sure you're achieving the organizational goals that you want to hit. But as that grows exponentially, how does that get managed? And is one person looking at all of them, or are they having meetings of whoever's overseeing each individual value stream to come together and say, we're seeing this, we're seeing that? How's the management part of that work?
So that's interesting. It all depends on how you structure your organization, right?
I love the "it depends" answer, by the way. That's all.
Right. So however you do your transformation in the value stream or your digital transformation, you move to a digital organization where you have these different structures. A lot of times value streams are dependent on each other, and sometimes they're not. When they are, they have these meetings and ceremonies, right? That do different things. For example, and you can think about it from a product perspective as well, right? You got 2 products. This product depends on what's in that product. So these companies need to communicate, and they need to put their requests in to that value stream so that they can move that product forward. So it creates these dependencies, right? So you need backlog alignment, you need product alignment, you need portfolio alignment all the way down through to make sure that you're marching toward the goals of the whole organization.
Right.
So it all depends on how you set up. Some of them are completely isolated, right? The value streams. And I struggle with this term encapsulating your value stream because it's really difficult, right? So especially in larger organizations today, especially in banks, financial institutions, and so on, it's hard to encapsulate a value stream from another one, right? So let's say you have a value stream that's responsible for your mainframe stuff. Well, most of those organizations about integrating all that data and connecting it, right? Your web application has to get data from your mainframe solutions in order to provide that solution to a customer. So it's very hard to encapsulate. So you have to make sure that you're able to understand the feedback between the two, analyze it, and then automate it. Make sure it's not an email or whatever. Here at Broadcom, we have a bunch of mainframe products, and we just finished up a connector to connect the mainframe products to the other products so we can actually get a good understanding of all that's been released in some of those other organizations.
Fantastic. All right. So let me just ask you this, Lance, if you would, for our listeners. First off, I'll point out that we recently completed a 3-part article series with you folks on visibility, alignment, and efficiency, and we'll make those available with some of the other materials from this webinar. But what would be, if you could, I know this is really difficult for you, but if you could just, in a few short sentences, what are the key takeaways that people need to leave here with to understand how to best become, to gain this visibility, alignment, and efficiency?
Well, the first one is when you think about visibility, that's lacking because everybody's working in their silos. So you can either decouple those silos and everybody work in one solution, or automate the flow of information between the two, right? Having it all rolling up to a place where I can see everything that's delivered. Make sure that you get the right analytics as well on the top side of that, right? That's one of our products, Value Ops Insights, that correlates this information and solves that data gap problem. Because you can't make good data-driven decisions if I don't have visibility. I don't see the work that's happening. I don't know how am I aligning to my outcomes and things that I'm trying to accomplish from a business perspective, getting all that. Alignment happens as well when you talk about working in silos, right? The development team works on what they think is cool, and sometimes they cherry pick that, right? Not what's really important today to make sure that we're getting toward this goal. Oh, well, it's technical debt. We have to fix that. Well, I might be able to put that off in order to deliver a new feature to drive more revenue or take market share, right? I did that a lot at ConnectAll, right? Where we create something new and then we go and take care of the technical debt a little after based upon what we're trying to accomplish. And it's just really inefficient working in all these different solutions and tools. So automation is the way, or you all work in one great solution if you need to.
Excellent.
Also down here, just so everybody knows that there's two QR codes. One's to request a demo for ConnectAll, and the other one is to get to that ebook on pattern thinking and how to look at the noise in that. And also talks about finding value-added and non-value-added activities, something I forgot to talk about through this, right? Because a lot of these meetings aren't value-added, right? And a lot of the emails and communication and the chat, there's just not value-added to accomplishing the goals of what you're trying to deliver to your customer.
Right. Excellent. Well, Lance Knight, Chief Value Stream Architect of Value Ops at Broadcom. Always a pleasure to have you on, and thanks for the great information.
Well, hopefully we have a bunch more, Dave. I haven't done one with you so long, and
Right.
I don't feel like I picked on you enough during this one. I don't think I really
yeah, let's
did.
keep it that way.
Normally you're giving me whatever, but I always enjoy doing these with you, and I enjoyed this content. Hopefully this brings value to a lot of people on how to look at your value stream, use system thinking, use lean principles, and find patterns and become more efficient.
Excellent. Great. All right. So again, thank you, Lance. I'd like to thank Value Ops by Broadcom for sponsoring this event. And as always, thank you very much to all our attendees for being here today. And we hope you have gained some knowledge out of this. Until next time, when we do this, I'm Dave Rubenstein again, Editor-in-Chief of SD Times. So long for now.